Good morning from Zürich. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Tyler Brûlé. Coming up on today's program, really around just the fullest desk we've ever had. My guest today, Myriam Zumbühl, is also here. Juliet Linley, Florian Egli. But Juliet, I'm going to start with you. Also with very bouncy hair this morning, I must say.
Very bouncy hair in honor of my home country, Trinidad and Tobago. But speaking of bodies, yesterday I was also at a body, and Emma, for the first time, it's like the water temperature and the air temperature was the same. It was 25. It was quite incredible considering we're not big fans of cold water swimming, no. Emma and I. I know Tyler is, but we're not. But yesterday it was very warm water swimming. Too warm. Okay, we're going to unpack maybe that and many, many other things. Also, our news editor, Cermak, is standing by in London, and we'll head to Bangkok for the latest from there.
Sawadee ka, this is Gwen Robinson from Monocle Radio in Bangkok, and I'll join you later to talk about recent and remarkable developments in Thai politics.
Plus, Isabella Smith from Books & Company in Copenhagen gives us a rundown of the best new books for autumn. It's the 25th of August, 2024. Live from Zurich, this is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from Zurich, this is Monocle on Sunday with Tyler Brûlé.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Monocle on Sunday. I'm very happy that Emma Nelson is here, just 90 centimeters, a meter away. Emma Nelson, tell our listeners, why are you not over on the other side of the channel today? You're right next door.
There's a decampment that is now becoming a bit of a tradition that, put it this way, as soon as we touched down in Zurich, the first thing that my son said was, I'm going in the lake. There's a deep love being forged for Zurich here, and the final summer days. I know you guys have all gone back to school, but there is that real need to come out and just round off the summer properly with some lake, some friends, and a little bit of radio as well, which is quite good. I was going to say also, it's a busman's holiday for me.
Our listeners will be getting a little bit of you from, of course, around these microphones across the week. Myriam Zumbühl is also here this morning. Very nice to see you. It's been a while since we've seen you around the mic.
Oh, yeah.
What has been keeping you busy across this sort of up and down, strange summer? Because I always feel like our memories of summer is very short. As long as it was like sunny yesterday, the summer was great. But it was a shocker at the beginning. May was bad, June was bad, July not great. August has been okay.
Well, I was lucky. So I spent most of my summer on Nantucket Island in the state. It was sunny every day. So actually, I'm very thankful it's raining today. I have a house to clean up. I have to hoover my apartment. I actually welcome a day where it's raining. And I love, to lay in bed in the morning. And then, so this morning, I opened windows and it was raining. I loved it. But to get back to your question, I was busy doing two things. Yes, I was traveling a lot for Confect, to find new stories and talk to people. More on that, in future magazines. But then for the NZ set, I've been, cooking up, thinking up new recipes. We just shot the new recipes for September. Expect red cabbage salads. First sightings of pumpkins yesterday, Friday on Brûlé Market. So I've been working on that. Today, if you have the NZZ magazine, I am suggesting a cake with whole pears.
Oh, that's you.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, that's you with your whole pears. I spotted that earlier on.
Put some cardamom in it. It's going to make a big difference.
Or you can put the cardamom, of course, in your pumpkin latte, because it's also pumpkin. It's pumpkin caramel latte season coming up at Starbucks as well. I know that our Juliet Linley, who's also here, you're very excited about that as well. You're hoping that there's going to be a drive-through somewhere between where your residence. Yeah, maybe.
I think it would be great with vegan whip, of course. I've always wondered, what is the vegan whip? I don't know.
You don't want to know what's in there, Julie.
No, you don't. That's bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt.
Yeah.
But just for the record, D90's Monocle Cafe has run out of matcha, so get the word out.
Matcha crisis. It's almost as bad as the olive oil crisis as well.
But I have to bring my own. I'll share.
Okay, Florian Egli is here, as he's been dubbed Flojo before he went on air. What did you try, Emma? You tried Flow Egg, but that also sounds something like you'd put into some type of like
egg front page of
the redesigned NZZ Sonntag.
Why is there an egg?
What is the story?
The story about the egg is that the German government now recommends to eat less eggs. So it used to be 1 to 2 eggs per day, and now it's just per week. And now there is a huge debate in Germany whether that's scientifically correct or not. But the fact is that they're including.
Don't you think Germany has some bigger things to worry about than
probably
egg consumption? But
the fact is that NZZ Sonntag, on the day of its redesign, puts a fried egg on the first page.
What else do you put on the front page?
Yeah, but it's a Sunday morning.
Yeah, I was going to say. I think that's speaking to Myriam. That is her like cozy.
Florian would have preferred scrambled, not fried.
Exactly.
Yeah. For example,
Poached.
omelette. Okay.
Yeah. Poached.
Let's also go to London as well. Our Cermak is is standing by for us there. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. I'm very jealous listening to all of you over there in Zurich.
I know you're all alone, aren't you, in Studio 1 or 2 or wherever you might be?
I am all alone here in the studio at the moment. I also went to sort of Little Venice along the canals yesterday here in London, but not quite the same as the lake in Zurich, I have to say.
No, the weather was not at its finest yesterday. I heard anyway.
It was not. We were sort of darting in and out of rain. We did manage to find some covering and sort of have a little wine and tapas just by the canals, which was very nice while it came pouring down, absolutely pouring next to us, but we still stuck it out outside. So, we're quite determined here, even when the weather is not so nice.
Chris, we're going to do a little bit of a spin around looking at major news stories, of course, and not just major, just stories in general. We've decided already, though, it's been a very serious news weekend. Of course, it's a very serious news day today as well. Why don't we start off where you are? What's dominating the front pages in the UK today? I
mean, it has been a pretty big day of news, hasn't it, for a Sunday, Tyler? I mean, here, one of the things, if you want, just from the UK that is dominating is that Keir Starmer is going to be giving a speech, the Prime Minister, later this week. On Tuesday, he's going to warn of what he calls a deep rot in UK society and finances, basically saying that the entire nation has to prepare for tax hikes and spending cuts. So that's something that everyone here is going to be watching. But then beyond that, I mean, you kind of heard the headlines from Emma there, and there's so much going on. Like, all 4 of those headlines are major ones that we could unpack on this show, starting, of course, with Israel striking southern Lebanon, Hezbollah responding or saying they were initially planning an attack on Israel, response to the killing of their senior commander, and calling it the first phase of an attack that's going to be coming over the next few days.
Yeah, this is obviously something which is, of course, pretty much dominating screens everywhere at the moment. The other big story, though, out of the UK, this is maybe one for Juliet and certainly for Emma as well. Not just because you're moms, but is a story in the Daily Mail. Because I don't know if you've caught this one. This is about Kirsty Allsop's fury. A social services probe son's controversial interrail trip. Now, this is a story about someone who has some degree of fame in the entertainment circles of the UK. This is a mom who sends her kid interrailing, jumping on a train, 15 years old, with a 16-year-old friend, and it's now blown up into this sort of massive national issue. How could you send your 15-year-old out on the rails by himself, etc., etc.? Now, but here's the main point about the story, Chris. The one photograph of this child out on his own, he's standing in front of a Swiss train station. So it's like they didn't send him to Albania. Nothing wrong. I'm sure Albanian rail's fine, but he's like, it's a picture postcard, SBB at its finest. Nothing's going to happen to him.
Safe as houses. There's no one there.
Okay, what do you think of this story? I mean, because it's really blown up into something, Emma.
Well, it is, and she's been on the radio and has had to sort of.
For our listeners around the world, who is she? Because.
Well, she's sort of a person who was really famous about 20 years ago for selling houses on the telly, and then has sort of popped up here and there with vaguely controversial comments. But the Daily Mail quite likes to have a bit of a sort of dig at her once
and a floral
in a while.
Dress.
Really, lots of specialises in quite sort of blousy floral dresses and a sort of kind of a homely, wholesome look to her. My thoughts are, well, it depends how independent this kid is, but also nowadays we have phones, and actually you're probably safer on a train travelling across Europe than you are pretty much anywhere else, I would imagine. And so, yeah, okay, do it 30 years ago, no contact for anybody. You go to a payphone every week and you just make sure, you
just
ring.
And that seemed to work for hundreds of millions.
Worked for me. And you just ring your dad and ask for more money, and that's basically why you check in with your parents once a week. But this one is just, I'm not quite sure. Like you say, if they're in Switzerland, fantastic.
Also that someone's reported her, or just because she was out in public, that also social services have contacted her, from whatever the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. It is rather.
Is it against the law for a 15-year-old to leave the UK on his own? Like, what is the issue here?
I think it might be an issue of sort of like reasonableness and risk. And also they have to be seen to be doing it.
Yeah, and they were saying that they had to do a whole assessment.
Of her as a parent.
Yeah, and were the right protections put in place, etc. I mean, you're looking stunned over there thinking, what is all the fuss about?
Oh, yeah, I don't understand. He looks very happy to be finally on his own.
Also, this is because I think the other thing, if you deconstruct the picture of this kid, he knows how to pack, he knows how to dress.
Yeah.
Like it's not like he had sort of like 3 bags, so if he had to run really quickly,
he has a really good backpack that he can roll.
He can roll it, he can put on his
he's a very
We're good
innocent.
to
He
go.
looks like he's in a mountain village.
He is in a mountain village, Myriam.
He looks inordinately clean for a 15-year-old.
You've been to a version of that village 1,000 times.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I come from there. I can
Yeah.
prove it. It's safe. Yeah.
So we're big fans.
Are you
We're
going
big
to
fans.
send your son James?
Absolutely. I mean, even before he's 50.
Yeah.
You can team up
we
with
had a whole
Hugo.
issue. He
They're
took
off.
a
Would
plane
you
on his
send him to
own.
Argentina on a rail trip, maybe?
Perhaps. No, but he took a flight at the age of 12 now this summer
As
from
an
Rome to
unaccompanied minor.
Zurich. Complete, not even just over the age of 12.
Not with one of
you
those
pick up-
like big, like
not
massive
even the thing hanging
tags,
around
like
your
saying,
neck.
look
It's
at
so
me,
classic.
like I'm a 12-year-old loser.
It's
Like,
the kid's
yeah,
name,
no.
right? So he had none of that. But
I
then
hate it. You know, I
You used to have to
I
do
would
that.
take it off, actually.
Yeah, we had to wear it until
Forget
14
it.
or something. But he got stopped by the Italian police at the border control in the airport, and they called me, and I'd already left the airport. And they said, he's 12 years old, where's this kid going? But Swiss allows you at the age of 12 to go on your own.
Yeah.
But not Italian citizens age 12.
Of course
so he
not.
has a Swiss passport, so he could go.
Anything could go wrong. Florian, when was the first time you went abroad on your own?
On my own abroad, must have been like 15, around that. I did an interrail, I think, at 15 or 16. Like,
Okay,
for a
so you
month.
could have been
And
like,
there were
you know-
no like mobile phone, internet connected.
I think you should sort of weigh in and support
Yeah.
Ms. Alsop
And
on
we
all
did,
of
we
this.
did East. We did Zürich to Istanbul.
Okay. Speaking of East, Chris Cermak,
Nice.
what about you? When was the first time you were let loose?
I think I had to fly transatlantic. I remember when I was pretty
Oh,
young.
fancy pants.
Yeah. I do remember that for being, but in that case, like, yes, it was more that unaccompanied minor thing. So I was taken very, very good care of. Had like my own 3 seats in the back of the plane, and the stewardesses were always coming over to check on me. So it was a very nice flight. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing that now if I just, you know, if somebody wanted to claim that I needed help or some kind and get a whole, you know, row of seats to myself, I would take that.
But also very difficult to find 3 empty seats going across the Atlantic.
Well, exactly.
across the Atlantic these days.
And indeed
that's
air hostesses
yeah,
as well.
Exactly. Those days are well gone. Chris, anything else? Maybe we can step out of UK news. But just going back to your point about what Keir Starmer is going to say. Did this also? I don't know. Is this a uniquely British thing when it comes to comms, where this is now, 48 hours before. It was actually, this story also broke yesterday. So let's say it was 72 hours where you have this, the Prime Minister is going to say, it's like, can't we just wait till he says it? Or do we have to sort of do this massive build-up? I mean, this idea of sort of, deploying, sort of launching sort of, full transcripts in advance it's a bit strange, because I feel you get a little bit of it in the States. I don't feel you get it elsewhere, but it's maybe, Emma, you've got sort of a view on what happens with parliamentary and political comms.
I think that it's absolutely obvious what happens, and it's been going for about 30 years now. I think this started with the Blair government, that you were briefed before, and by the time you get to something like, I don't know, the annual budget, that everybody knows what's in the budget before you even start, and so there's actually very, very little point. I think it's a very concerted effort by the Labour government at the moment to set the tone and set. I mean, for the last month and a half, we've had a very clear idea about what Labour stands for. I don't know if anybody's been following these riots and the sort of sausage machine of the people who've been arrested and then immediately whacked into prison. It's like this catch of the day like you've never imagined. And so the tone that's being set really, really hard is something that obviously the Labour government have to get control of. It's that first 100 days. If they can get the 100 days, those are the bits that people remember. And so it's absolutely clear that Labour needs to get its message out straight away.
I want to just do a quick spin around the table, maybe because we'll start with you. You can, and then we'll let you go to get on with it. Maybe a damp Sunday, but one more story for us before we look at what's happening in the papers. Of course, you can join in on what we're going to be discussing here as well. But what else do you have?
Well, I have to say, I think I'm fascinated by this story that Emma mentioned about Boeing as well, because it's just such an incredible story about NASA declining to allow its astronauts to fly back on Boeing's Starliner. I mean, Boeing has had so many problems over the last years, really, and this was such a blow, but also just interesting, as NASA, as a space agency, tries to develop this idea of private space flight, and just kind of going back through the history, I was looking as well, or just this idea that, back in 2014, when NASA first decided that they were not going to build another space shuttle and that they would make this a private venture, there were many who were saying, only Boeing should do this, only Boeing should get the contract, and then there were various discussions, and then SpaceX was brought into the conversation also at about half the cost. Now SpaceX is the only one that can do this, and Starliner's Boeing Starliner has been having all these problems trying to get off the ground. It's just a really interesting story about the kind of dynamic between private and public, NASA kind of overseeing these two companies, using their information but doing their own tests as well, and the fact that they decided at the end of the day it's not quite ready yet. They had to have these incredibly difficult conversations with Boeing. They're still confident. They still say, oh no, Starliner will be ready somewhere down the line. But it's just a really fascinating dialogue between the two.
Yeah, and not to mention, it comes off of the back of a week as well where the much anticipated Boeing 777X, that is now delayed due to another parts issue as well. So not having a good time, but people who are having a good time, it seems to be the folks who are working for Airbus, because Florian, you picked up on a story. It's the front page of the Financial Times headline: struggling Nigerians fly into storm as plush Airbus swells presidential fleet.
Yeah, so Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has decided to buy more aircrafts, and it's all Airbus. So Boeing doesn't sell in Nigeria, it seems. So the presidential fleet now grew to 11 with an additional acquisition of an Airbus. And the Nigerian population is getting very uneasy about the president and the president's family flying to France and other places several times. So he flew to France 4 times already this year.
Because he has to work on the interior of the next plane that he's ordered.
Not sure what this is to do with Olympics or anything else, but it's apparently for business trips or government matters. But I mean, there's obviously some doubt on that.
And and I think everyone is probably rather happy as Airbus seems to sort of push ahead and win this commercial airliner game against Boeing. Myriam, what do you have aside from, of course, recipes, cardamom, and all kinds of other things? What else have you picked up on?
So I have to say I was intrigued this morning to read the making of Kamala Harris in the NZZ am Sonntag, and while I think it's very interesting how they were able to really sort of reframe her brand, if I may say so, and how they're selling, what is it, family, freedom, and future, which to me, sometimes when I read and when I hear, all the chants that they're chanting, they might also just be a little bit Republican as well, or just at least be in a way that even a Republican can understand. I'm not taking any sides, but I also quite like how this is just a woman, following the Democratic convention, who is just so joyful and strong and optimistic. I'm intrigued by that, and I like it, and I'm very happy, or just to see that also for my American friends, because they're starving, for good news. And there was an interesting story in the NZZ am Sonntag that really explains how this message was crafted around.
I sort of feel that, Juliet, you're going to somehow point yourself as being the official Kamala correspondent. But there's a story, Chris Cermak, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but this is it's Camilla Long, the columnist for The Times, and it's her 96 hours at the Kamala Harris show. Schmaltzy sound bites and spray-on chinos. The Democratic National Convention was all about magic, barnstorming rhetoric, and the ruthless erasure of Joe Biden. It's a spiky, interesting. Indeed it was. I'm not sure if you've read Camilla Long's piece, but it's interesting. I'm standing on the floor of an arena in Chicago waiting for Kamala Harris. It's been nearly 3 hours. There are thousands of us squished together, toppling over, jostling, hot, uncomfortable, straining under the lights. Everywhere I look, there are people holding tall Kamala signs, shouting, screaming, panting, roaring. Music is pounding. It was like last night, the night before that, a 96-hour psycho war dance. I'm not sure if that's sort of if that's the picture that the NZZ has painted.
Not exactly, no.
But maybe just, Chris, given your perch, just your reflections also on the past week, because we haven't spent much time, we haven't spent any time other than Myriam bringing this up on Chicago.
I have to say, I think, not to push back, but what I found interesting about these last few days, when you compare it also to, say, the Republican National Convention and Donald Trump, that really was about him, right, and how he's reshaped the Republican Party, the message, the policy, everything. What I found interesting about the DNC is the entire supporting cast. So the fact that you've had these 4 weeks for Kamala Harris to be anointed the Democratic candidate, it hasn't really only been about her. That's that's what I think is interesting. On the one hand, yes, it's been this huge release and celebration of Democrats that they now have a candidate they can put their hopes behind. But when you look behind the scenes a little bit and you listen to some of the speeches as well, it does feel like everyone is not only pinning their hopes on her, but kind of pinning their own messages on her, what they want her to be. And that's what I think is going to be interesting going forward, how she really defines herself. Because at this point, yes, as the NZZ says, you know, this is about the remaking of Kamala Harris, but she hasn't really had time to do that yet. The policy platform of the Democrats, like all of that was already there, right? It's not as if she has had time to actually change that and say what kind of things she really wants to do. And that's what I found interesting. It was also about Obama. It was about the Clintons, you know, Tim Walz. You had so many other characters that were powerful, making their own speeches, their own priorities, and then saying this is what Kamala wants as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how she really defines herself and says what she is about, what her Democratic Party is about going forward.
Yeah, there's a great, just sharing one last paragraph from Camilla Long's piece. It says, Joe Biden, Jill Hunter, their deranged Secret Service biting dog commander, all long since in witness
very
protection.
Happily disappeared, yes.
Mention Biden's name and they'll barely respond. And he actually appeared at the convention.
It's absolutely incredible. This article does merit reading. I'm just having a look at here. There's even the men, it's quite strange to talk to a 6-foot retired web designer called Chuck from Minnesota in pearls, or to see a male delegate from California sporting a straight-up Queen Mother grade choker and Kamala makeup. It's a really clever trick that the Democrats have had to play very, very quickly, because we would, you know, all the discussion was when Joe Biden was sort of declining on his way to the departure lounge, was that they haven't got the time to turn this around, and that Trump will seize the momentum. So they have had to absolutely go at this at 100 miles an hour. And they've also had to profit from the fact that Kamala is this unusual character that everybody kind of recognises her, but no one knows what she stands for. So that's slightly nightmarish, but at the same time, it's an absolutely perfect situation for them to just do the job incredibly quickly. I'm quite astonished by how fast the turnaround's been. No, absolutely.
Speaking of turnarounds, and hopefully one can come, I want to go back to the NZZ am Sonntag, which of course you mentioned has had a bit of a redesign. Magazine, not so much. I'm looking at the front cover of the NZZ am Sonntag with the headline, and we've got a picture of a sort of traditional Swiss house. We've got maybe sort of another typical 70s building, and then in Switzerland, something quite interesting where they erect these sort of tall poles when a building is going up. So of course the residents and the neighbors can comment on them. It's going to block their view, etc. Anyway, but the headline is Switzerland is ugly, and it goes in to just talk about sort of that is are we moving into a place where there's just increasingly more bland architecture, more sort of box ticking. You know that if you're going to go and build 36 new apartments, this is going to just fly through planning. It's okay. The neighbors aren't going to say very much. It's got sort of the same codes as everything else. It's going to have the same metal shutters. It's going to have the same. I know all of the codes. Yeah, you've got a bronze frame. I mean, it's general, and you see this going up and down the lake here, and pretty much. It gets a little different when you get to the Romandie in Switzerland, but certainly in German-speaking Switzerland, you're getting a lot of the same. So to the Swiss around the table, Florian, I will start with you. Is Switzerland ugly?
I would say 80% of the built environment, yes.
Yes. But as, of course, a nature lover, no. I mean,
yes, as a nature lover, no. But also the story is very old. So this debate of is Switzerland ugly has been going on, I would say, since the 80s at least. And we've seen... I think a kind of real segregation. So you have the nature spots that are absolutely beautiful, picturesque, like nice lakes and everything is nice. And you have the cities, which have been actually kept very kind of quite tidy, I would say. There's a lot of kind of there was never a war, so a lot of the old buildings are still around. So it's kind of very historic and very cute and very, I think quite charming. And then you have everything in between, where most it's just suburbia. And we're very bad at concentrating settlements. So you have the whole arc from Zürich to Geneva, which is basically populated, but very widespread. And that is there's really no architecture, I think, appeal to it, or also no will to make it nice. We have so many nice architecture offices in Switzerland, and I don't know what they all do.
They're all working overseas.
Yeah,
Myriam, what's your take? And you're absolutely right, Florian. This is not new. It's been simmering for a while, but it seems that there's a concentration of it. I felt like this summer there's more cranes everywhere you look.
Just look here in Seefeld.
Yeah.
So many of the little wrought iron terraces and the houses with the traditional look completely being taken down when they looked perfectly good. I was saying, in Rome, buildings that survive centuries. Here, a building is 30 years old. Boom.
Yeah, it's almost as bad as Japan. Yeah, like we just let's rip it down.
And then you have all these concrete blocks. I mean, where I live, where you live, Tyler, they're not beautiful buildings. It's incredible.
Mine's more beautiful than yours, but
no,
yeah,
definitely not. But covered in ivy, and then it all looks good. That's my
the thing,
policy.
Right? And
Can
that's
we
what
just
as soon as we're off air, I've got.
You're calling your garden.
No, I've got 5 amazing, they're like 7-meter long ivies that
you have them where?
They're going to be rewoven into a trellis. That's what's happening after we get off air. See, that's a project for you. Myriam, do you want to come around? These are the types of Sunday projects that we like.
I'm in. I'm absolutely in. I mean, to your question, now, of course, Switzerland is not ugly, but I think when it comes to architecture, we lack courage, and we have so many rules, what you can do and what you cannot do. A friend of mine had a house at the Münsterhof, so in the middle of the city, and he painted it. He dared to paint it in yellow.
Like canary yellow.
It was a revolution.
He's been deported now.
Oh, yeah. And I myself live in a yellow building in Kreis 5. I don't know how they managed to do that.
So not nice yellow or nice?
Oh, no, nice
Fluo.
Yellow, but for the neighbors, that they wouldn't complain and say, oh, no, this is too bright.
But if you have a dinner party after 10, boy, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lady in the yellow house.
They may be ugly, but they're built well.
No, yes, there's absolutely. I mean,
I'll take a heavy door.
Yeah.
Over,
no, you're right.
With a solid, like whooshing
so
thud.
Solid.
Yes. No, that they absolutely nail here. But anyway, why don't you nail the news, Emma Nelson, bottom of the hour for us?
Thank you very much indeed, Tyler. Israel has launched what it called preemptive strikes against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. Shortly after the attack began, Hezbollah said it launched strikes towards Israel in retaliation. German police have arrested a man suspected of killing 3 people and injuring another 8 in a knife attack in Zollingen. The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attack. 2 NASA astronauts who flew to the International Space Station in June aboard Boeing's faulty Starliner capsule will have to wait until next year before they can go back to Earth. Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams became the first crews to ride Starliner for what was expected to be an 8-day test mission. And recently published archives in Brazil have shown a remarkable number of UFO sightings by military pilots. Among the most recent reports in April, a pilot reported seeing a UFO as he was about to land in Porto Alegre. The aviator said the colours alternated between white and orange and said, "This is the 4th day I've seen such an object this week." And those are the headlines. Back to you, Tyler, across the desk.
That demands a question. Do you believe in UFOs? Florian, I'll start with you.
Do I believe in UFOs? I think it's... Yeah, for the matter of the story, yes, why not?
Why not? Especially
let's investigate. Why not?
Brazilian ones.
Yes, in good scientific tradition, let's investigate.
Well, yeah. Also, I mean, isn't your current setup in Munich you're partly funded by the technical university? That's something they should be looking into, right? Because I mean, if Germany's concerned about egg consumption, they might as well sort of put some focus on UFOs.
Yeah, maybe we should launch a program. I think it's been too America centric, like the whole UFO story. So maybe
it has. I'm glad the Brazilian
we should follow up the Brazilian from the European side too.
The Brazilians have something. This Juliet. What about you? You've got that massive terrace.
Definitely do not
any UFO spotting.
No,
any landing.
Nah.
You could actually land a UFO on your terrace.
On my
I don't know how big UFOs are, but
how big are they? Who knows?
Who knows? Right? Exactly.
A mini one.
Yeah.
They'd have a very nice barbecue if they did.
Great barbecue and pizza.
Great welcome.
Pizza oven.
Any UFO spottings in Nantucket? That's I think that's prime territory for seeing UFOs.
No UFOs.
No.
Whales, yes. But I think, I don't know.
Whales in Zürich, too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I know. How about they smell better in Nantucket, to be honest?
Talk us through that whale,
tell us, just for our listeners, why is there a whale in Zurich?
Okay, so there is a whale at the border of the Lake of Zurich, and so I haven't seen it yet. Your kids have seen it.
They saw it on TikTok.
They saw it on TikTok.
Oh, so I thought it was real.
It's already rotted.
But it must be stinky, and but it's not real. So it is like a...
I don't quite understand what you've said.
It was a work of art.
It's a work of art. So it's work of art.
An installation.
And I just wonder, how did they make it stink? Because it is a piece of art. It's not a real whale correct?
They had scent coming off it in some way.
But anyway, it was a large installation. It was a life-size sperm whale, which is sort of on the side. I was just on the banks of the Limat or something.
On the lake.
Of the lake.
I was the lake. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was nearby here.
It wasn't in my hood. It wasn't in my hood.
There were a lot of people investigating the whale, the fake whale, and when you asked them, they were telling you to say. So, like a friend of mine asked them, like, where did he come from? And then they said, well, it swam up the Rhine. It swam up the Rhine, and then he got trapped in the Lake of Zurich. So we had to take it out. Yeah. It's like, and now we investigate, like, what happened to this runway?
Yeah. Anyway,
send them into railing.
Something for all of the visiting influencers. Let's head to Bangkok now. Our Gwen Robinson is standing by. We have so much to cover, Gwen, because it has been quite an extraordinary, well, you could say sort of 2 weeks, but certainly the past week in the world of Thai politics. So Sawadika, bring us up to speed.
Well, Sawadika, indeed. I was afraid you'd ask that. We are in the realm of you can't make this stuff up, really. Even for old hands, like I'm quite an old hand. It's hard to imagine a time where there has been more sort of extraordinary events happening in the space of a short time, and that even counts coups, which generally are quite bloodless and very businesslike. But I think it really started this time since August the 7th, when the Constitutional Court here banned the most popular party, and obviously the party that won the most votes in last year's election, Move Forward, and dissolved that party and banned the 11 of the top members. And that wasn't really a shock. I guess it had been expected, and the party sort of recouped and renamed itself and has tried to, restructure itself. But then 1 week later, so on August 14th, I think the entire country was in deep shock when the same court, the Constitutional Court, disqualified the Prime Minister, really out of the blue. No one had really expected that. There had been a kind of spoiler case filed by a bunch of mischievous senators who are controlled by one of the elements of the ruling coalition, taking issue with the fact that the Prime Minister had appointed a man who had been convicted years ago of bribing a judge, and that appointment had been approved, as all the other cabinet appointments are, by various committees, and various processes had been observed. So in fact, it did seem quite extraordinary that the Prime Minister would end up carrying the can for that when that had been approved. So I think at that point the stock market went into a tailspin. Analysts were absolutely floored. No one had really expected it. And since then, just to cut a very long story short, the ruling coalition of 11 parties ended up choosing none other than the young daughter of Thaksin Shinawatra, the former disgraced Prime Minister who had been ousted in a coup in 2006 and had recently returned to serve out what he claimed would be the rest of his his prison term for corruption charges. So that kind of sums it up in a nutshell, if you can follow any of that.
So, Gwen, just quickly, let's rewind to Strata Tavison, the Prime Minister up until 2 weeks ago. Was he hoodwinked by this? Of course, he was very, very close, you could say, sort of, arm in arm with the Shinawats. No longer, or this was all part of the plan?
Well, indeed. I mean, that's actually one of the extreme conspiracy theories going around, that this was all part of a grand plan, that Thaksin had done the dirty and decided to switch setter and put his daughter in. In fact, without getting boring about it, if you go into some of the details, I don't think even a master, a schemer and wheeler dealer like Thaksin could have planned all this. You could not have really worked out that the court would go the way it did, even though the court did go the way that everyone had assumed it would on the Move Forward dissolution. I don't think anyone expected this particular result. And there are many other aspects. For example, even the elevation of his young daughter, Pattongtarn, who is now incredibly the Prime Minister. She's 38. She's never held public office at all. And her one claim to fame is as a businesswoman, but happens to be a businesswoman in the company owned by Daddy, or rather the family. So I don't think
you're a fan, and you're feeling positive about this. I can tell. Gwen, so just it's always good to take the temperature. We know it's always generally hot in Thailand and Bangkok, but what is the mood right now? Because there's one of exasperation. Of course, you have a party which what one would have thought was generally democratically elected. You have, of course, the ongoing revolving door of leadership at the top table, and then, of course, as you mentioned, the markets. What is the business sentiment in the country?
Well, that's really a good question, and you just summed that up so well. But it's extremely mixed. One thing I have to say that was striking was the banning of Move Forward, the party that most voters, and particularly a lot of young ones in this country, voted for. The banning, I thought, and many people thought, would at least see some protests. Like we've seen the height of protests was some years ago when there were, tens and tens of thousands of young and old flocked into public spaces in Bangkok to protest about the lèse-majesté and many other things. But no, there was some discontent, but there wasn't the public outrage, which really was surprising. But then secondly, the dismissal of the Prime Minister and the elevation of Thaksin's daughter. Meanwhile, also at the same time, one should say, Thaksin had returned to Thailand last year, as I said, to face his term, and was actually paroled almost immediately, and has been photographed frolicking around and having parties and doing all kinds of things, and then was pardoned, totally pardoned from all these charges he faced, and has apparently received back the money that he was accused of getting through ill-gotten money anyway. So this is all, I think, utterly bewildering people. On the other hand, a lot of the, let's just say, the wider public have been, I think, quite wooed by the promises that Thaksin's party he founded, Pheu Thai, now his daughter's at the head of that, have made for this digital wallet payment, which is going to be the equivalent of 10,000 baht. It's only $300 for every Thai. And it does seem like people are very eager to get their hands on that. And it's almost like a bribe. It was raised in the election campaign that SETA went out to promise, and they've hyped it up. And people too seem to have moved on and are looking at this. There's a lot of quiet discontent, I think, amongst certain sort of particularly the intellectual class, students, others about Move Forward. But as I said, the party has renamed itself the People's Party and has come out defiantly. They've appointed new leaders who are also young and bright, very typical of Move Forward, and vow to carry on. They still have seats in Parliament, so they still are a force to reckon with in Parliament. So I think broadly, Thailand is probably picking itself up and moving on. And believe it or not, after this extraordinary speech that Thaksin gave on Thursday, where people paid millions, literally millions of baht for tables to attend this speech, he outlined his vision for Thailand in the future, including a 14-point economic plan and, tax cuts, etc. He said the central bank and the finance ministry should talk to each other more. This is very detailed stuff. This was an agenda. So, after that, the stock market went wild for all the companies that would benefit from the sectors that Thaksin named, for example, creative industries, electric vehicles, industrial estates, etc. So, very much a kind of sign that this former and disgraced leader is really back in power, really the force behind this government run by his very young daughter. And it does seem people are accepting it. We haven't seen the cabinet list yet, and that will probably take at least another week or two because the Prime Minister, Pattongtarn, does not have to present her agenda to Parliament until mid-September. So I think there's a lot of interest in who will be minister. At the moment, Thailand has no ministers. They're all caretakers who are going to be gone in 2 weeks. Again, a very disturbing situation. So I think people are just, maybe they've given up. There's not really much protest or excitement or, outrage.
Gwen Robinson, I will see you in 2 weeks in Bangkok.
Oh, come on over, Tyler.
I think there's plenty to discuss. Gwen Robinson, our correspondent for us in the Thai capital. It's just coming up to it's just past 10:43 here in Zurich. We're going away for a very short break. When we come back, we're going to be talking books in Copenhagen.
Monocle's free to subscribe daily email newsletters, the Monocle Minute and Weekend Edition, deliver headlines and a swathe of recommendations from our editors, correspondents and bureau. You can also browse a menu of radio highlights and Monocle films. Our weekend newsletters deliver great columns from Andrew Tuck on Saturdays and Tyler Brûlé on Sundays, cultural highs, media diets and far-off newspapers, recipes to cook at home. It's a fun take on weekend living. Head to monocle.com/minute to be part of the conversation.
You are back with Monocle on Sunday here in Zurich. We're live in Zurich. Emma Nelson is here, aren't you, Emma Nelson?
I am. I've just been told to find a goat story.
Yeah. Not maybe at the top of the next news headline. Myriam Zumbühl is also here, frequent contributor to Confect, also the NZZ as well. Florian Egli, he just lives in Munich. Used to live here part time, but is doing some think tanky things as well. And of course, Juliet Linley is also here, also our goat recipe correspondent. We are now heading a little bit north of Copenhagen right now, up to, I think, direction Hellerup, to talk to one of our favorite booksellers. Isabella Smith is standing by for us there. Isabella is, of course, the co-founder of Books & Company, frequent voice around the microphone. We're coming into cozy season. At the top of the program, Isabella, Myriam was just really talking about the beauty of these kind of rainy, slightly cooler days, the ideal kind of morning to, of course, sort of look beside your bed and sort of see what on my book stack should I be reading, and that is the task I'm going to set you this morning. What should we be looking at and looking forward to this autumn?
That won't be difficult, Tyler. Good to be on again. It is getting a little bit cooler here in Copenhagen as well. Everyone's back sort of at work and school's back, and we're looking forward to sort of what is traditionally the most exciting time in publishing, which is the fall. And we send out a quarterly pre-publication newsletter with top titles to look out for and pre-order. And the fall is by far the hardest because there are so many great titles to choose from. But I've chosen a few. Honestly, it seems a little unfair to the rest, but here we go. Up first is the long-awaited new book by Sally Rooney, the Irish author of Normal People, among other books. And hers will definitely be one to look out for in September. It's called Intermezzo. It's about two brothers in their 30s in Dublin with very little in common, but whose lives become intertwined by the death of their father.
I'm just looking at our Juliet Linley excitement. You're a Rooney fan, Juliet? Yes.
I am a Rooney fan. I've read her previous two. I don't know how many she's got out, but yes, I am a Rooney fan. Have not read this latest one. Very eager to.
You're excited though.
It. Excited maybe is an overstatement. Okay. I prefer Jhumpa Lahiri, but that's another story.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
well, right?
Unfortunately, she doesn't have a new book out this fall, but we'll wait for that.
Sorry, Juliet. Okay, up next, Isabella.
Up next is another very highly anticipated book, slightly very different, by Richard Osman, who is the author of the now beloved, some might even say classic, almost, Thursday Murder Club series. But this time, instead of this group of octogenarians, the main detectives are a father-in-law, daughter-in-law duo. He's a retired investigator. She's a security officer. And this is undoubtedly going to be one of the fall's biggest hits. One of those two with on a rainy day and a cup of tea will be the perfect book. He has a great humor, warmth, and ingenious plotting. And then something completely different, but another surefire hit that everyone is looking forward to is the new Haruki Murakami novel. It's called The City and Its Uncertain Walls, which is coming out in November. It's the story of a young man whose girlfriend mysteriously vanishes, and he sets his heart on finding the imaginary city where her true self lives. It just sounds so beautiful. And by the way, the cover also gorgeous. The novel is said to be a love story, an ode to books, and a parable for the strange times that we live in. And it is honestly, at least here in Denmark, no exaggeration to say that Murakami has a cult following. And I have a feeling we'll be seeing lots of customers on publication day. And also, I mean, it almost feels like a Studio Ghibli movie in the making, but, who knows?
Isabella, just your and I was going to say your last two. This is for everyone to sort of pay attention to, because these really feel like this is like proper sort of stocking stuffer season. This is what we're going to see probably stacked, not just at the front of your bookshop, but sort of everywhere. When I see, of course, the name Harari and Gladwell as the next two books, in time for Christmas.
Just in time, the follow-up to Tipping Point, which was Gladwell's groundbreaking book. And because he was such a turning point in popularizing nonfiction, I think this will also be a book that many will enjoy. He is again looking at ideas, trends, and phenomenon, but now, of course, in a very different world, 25 years on. And then Nexus by Harari, which, as you meant, the author of Sapiens and Homo Deus. And in this new book, he's taking a close look at information networks, historically, ever since the Stone Age, up to AI, and its effects on society, which honestly sounds like something we should all be reading. So, it sounds like a lot, but it's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Isabella, just tell me, what happens with consumer trends? People, if I think about the Danish market, of course, July is the big period, of course, when everyone is away. That's when at least part of Copenhagen is, and Aarhus might be partly shuttered. And of course, there's, obviously there's the beach read, there's people going out to their houses, etc. Do you really see a sort of a marked difference then come this time of year, end of August, going into September, that consumption patterns really change? And it's not just because obviously the books that you wanted to push that are coming out, but also that you're responding to the mood of the moment as well.
Yes, for sure. I think there's always a different mood in buying in the fall. People are more interested in, everybody's always affected by, whatever's going on in the world, and we will see trends towards that as well. But I think there is much more of let me get a book that I can sort of delve into, spend some time with, and not so much something that I can, have in my bag and take to the beach. It's a very different vibe.
And what happened? And of course, given that the seasonal change, I'm just looking at Myriam over here. Of course, obviously food is part of her beat. When you look at, of course, the cooking section, the world of recipes as well. I know there's nothing on the list here, but anything that you're excited about or anything that's been doing particularly well on the culinary front?
Excited about right now is actually the new Ottolenghi cookbook, and that's coming out I think September actually is the first one of the first ones. And he is such a huge hit. I think that is going to probably be one of our, for sure, biggest sellers for the fall and for Christmas. Comfort, which looks beautiful. It has this orange yellow, very fall kind of cover, and is all about comfort, home cooking. He's very good at blending stories from his life, from the region that he cooks from, and recipes for home and things that people can make together. So that is definitely a cookbook we're looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Emma Nelson beside me. I think she's already online as well, trying to order it, hopefully trying to order it from you. But Isabella Smith, co-founder of Books and Company in Hellerup, just outside of Copenhagen, always very good to chat. And just maybe just recapping all of those for our listeners. Intermezzo by Sally Rooney, We Solve Murders by Richard Osman, The City and Its Uncertain Walls by Murakami, Nexus by Yuval Harari, and Revenge of the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, and of course, Emma. Are you excited about the Ottolenghi cookbook coming out?
Massively excited about the Ottolenghi cookbook because it deals with this thing about childhood and stories and cooking together and the stuff that knits families together really well. But also, it is always so exhausting getting Ottolenghi ingredients that you'll be on your knees by the time you get home with your 47 carrier bags and your different ingredients.
What do you mean you can't find sort of, roasted cardamom sumac?
Yeah. Oh, goodness me.
Are you an Ottolenghi fan, Myriam?
Oh, yes, I am. What I love is that he's just a joyful being and a wonderful cook. And just in case you're missing an ingredient, Emma, don't worry, just skip it.
Just throw any grass in there.
Yes, as long as you have pomegranate seeds and yogurt and aubergines, you should be fine. You will be fine.
You've already got me three.
No, you're fine.
And sumac and other. There's a lot of sumac.
There's so much sumac.
But speaking of curried goat, no,
yes,
we're not going to speak about curried goat.
We're not speaking about curried goat.
But we will talk about the country in which it is a national dish, curried goat.
Wait, we're going to Trinidad.
Yeah, we
right
are.
now.
We're talking food. No?
Amazing.
And it's day 2 of Notting Hill Carnival. BBC is running that headline, and I know you're watching
news.
that. So Notting Hill Carnival was started by Trinis in the 60s in London.
And your hairstyle today is in honor of...
I don't know why he keeps talking about my hair. It's very puffy, yes, because I swam in the lake.
Right.
But Trinidad, throwing off the colonial vestiges, they're changing their coat of arms. They're redrawing it. The coat of arms includes the scarlet ibis, the national bird. It has some hummingbirds in it, but it also has 3 ships, which are the 3 ships that Columbus arrived in 1498 to Trinidad. And the Prime Minister has said, enough with these 3 ships. Let's put a steel pan in there instead. The steel pan is the national instrument.
Which you have one in your living room.
I have it in the living room. I play it, not for guests, just for myself.
But don't you think it'd be something that one day we actually do the Monocle on Sunday jingle on a steel drum?
Bring your instrument day.
I
like that.
How do we get it into the studio?
It's quite small. They have different sizes. That's a good question. They were made originally from oil drums because Trinidad is a country with a lot of oil. And the bass drum is like the whole drum, and then they cut it smaller and smaller, and mine is a tenor pan, so it's quite small. I can carry it. Could hang it around my neck.
What do you play on it?
What do I play? All sorts of amazing tunes. No, I'm not that good. And the funny thing is, I learned to play the steel pan when I lived in Bern because the Swiss have the highest number of steel pan orchestras outside of Trinidad. They're such nerds.
Why is that?
Because they're fascinated by this. They come to Trinidad and win the competition.
The Swiss do.
Because they're more like
and there's not even any direct non-stop flights, which is
not even direct non-stop.
Okay, but just to go back, I want to go back to the coat of arms. Is it a conversation, or is everyone sort of thrilled to see?
Well, no, of course, because some people say, of course, enough with the whole colonial past. But you got to change all the passports. You got to change all the expensive, man.
Yeah.
Do something else with the money.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that Trinidad still has, as a former British colony, it still has the UK Privy Council as its highest court of appeal. Why don't you change that for a start and make it the Caribbean Court of Justice as your highest court of appeal before you start thinking about the coat of arms?
CCJ, I like it.
Right?
Yeah.
There you go.
And that should sit in Port of Spain?
No. It already exists, and it does not sit in Port of Spain. And several of the former colonies in the Caribbean already have it as their highest court of appeal, but Trinidad does not yet.
Okay. Well, listen, Trinidad, is not short of some money. We don't know where all of it goes, of course, at all times. But I want to just give this to you, Florian. If you were advising a small Caribbean nation, and you said, look, you could reinvent and you could have a completely new coat of arms, and this is obviously will prompt maybe also a new flag, maybe as well. But
not necessarily. It's red, white, and black. It doesn't know.
Anyway, but you're going through a national rebranding. Is it a good idea when you also have to keep an eye on public finance as well?
Another small Pacific nation once tried to do this. New Zealand had a public vote on it, actually. They wanted to change the flag away from the Union Jack to the black fern, and it was rejected, interestingly. So they didn't change in the end. So,
but they repainted the planes, though, anyway.
They did, true. It never had the Union Jack on them. No, but in terms of public finances, if it is part of like national storytelling, I would totally do it. Like if it is something that is like cohesive and brings people together and gives them kind of something to strive for, then totally. And I think the public expenditure argument is
hence the steel drum as well, right? The great
because everybody's playing these despite the Swiss winning. I don't know. So maybe they should have a winning team first, right? Like let's win the steel drumming competition first and then change the coat of arms.
I don't agree.
The steel drum pan, is that also involved with the goat curry recipe as well?
You don't cook the curry in the pan generally, but you could.
You could
start
right? It's
trend.
like a paella. That's
Should
what I'm saying.
Should we give that a shot tomorrow evening?
Myriam is game. She's
Myriam's coming.
I'm on.
Yeah. She's bringing the goat. Where do you even buy goat?
I bet you probably in your little yellow house. I don't know. Maybe it's a big yellow house. You probably have actually, a Swiss Trinidad steel drum band probably around the corner.
No, but what we have is like a Dorfmusik. In Switzerland you have the Dorfmusik. Yeah, of course we have that. They played at the Rönckenplatzfest last night. It
you
didn't
love
get
the
me any
Rönckenplatz.
sleep. Yeah.
Never been to the Rönckenplatz.
We have the Hilby on right now in Küsnacht.
Let's talk about
bumper
that.
cars.
Oh God, we didn't get any sleep this weekend in Zurich.
I love the Hillbillies. I know you're not a fan.
Hillbilly elegy. That's what you said. That's
the
new Swiss
book I'm writing. But isn't it incredible? They go from village to village. They last only 3 days, Emma. They build them up, tear them down in 3 days. Not a bolt goes missing. Not a kid flies off the sort of, what's it called? But they're like major rides.
It's called the Phoenix.
What is the Phoenix?
That's the thing that kids fly off of, that they could, if it wasn't in
They
Switzerland.
have roller coasters.
Yeah.
They have a bunch of stuff.
That doesn't sound remotely unsafe at all.
No, anyway, it's a rainy day, and it always rains as well. At least on the one in Küsnacht. Oh,
Emma and I are going this
fantastic.
afternoon.
Are you going to
No,
Kilby as well?
my son's going. I'm
Is
going
Chris
nowhere
Cermak
near
still
it.
there? Chris, are you going to the Kilby this afternoon?
I mean, it might be a little tough for me to get there right now, but I'll think about it.
okay.
It sounds better than the Notting Hill Carnival, if I'm perfectly honest.
Hey, there's a flight every hour. You can make it. Friends, we've come to the end of our program, so thank you very much. Myriam, very nice to see you. Emma
Nice to be
Nelson, you're
back.
here all week.
I am.
Florian Egli. I mean, it's been twice in 2 weeks. I don't know what we're going to do. Juliet Linley, see you tomorrow evening. Steel drums and all. Also, a huge thanks to, of course, our producers today as well, Mariella Bevan, Emma Nelson, also looking after things, Wadi Sok here in Zurich, and also Mariella Bevan also back in London as well. Also to Gwen Robinson and Isabella Smith. I am Tyler Brûlé. I'll be here with Emma, I think, throughout the week. It's
Oh,
sort
it'd
of a
be
big
lovely.
one. See you soon.
Look forward to it.
Have a good week. Bye-bye.